Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for coming along. We are just letting a few people in and letting everyone get connected to the audio, and we'll look to get rolling it. Just give it one more minute, maybe. Just me. And in the meantime, while we're just waiting for people, if you want to say who you are in the chat and where you're from and what your interest in woodlots is, if you want to share that information, we'd love to hear it. But feel free to stay incognito if you'd rather. A few more folks just coming in. Right, well, I think we could start rolling. Gary, and if you don't mind just letting people in as they turn up, that would be great. Thank you. So welcome to the Wondrous World of Woodlots webinar, which is a real tongue twister. I can't remember who we have to blame for that, but it might be Ross Gemmell. Thanks, Ross. It's great to have you all along tonight, and thank you very much to our speakers as well. We have Tom Bradley from British Columbia. We have Andy Brown and Gail from Calaverock in Scotland. Anna Austin and Robbie Cowan, who are the estate managers and workers for Calaverock. And we've got Gary Servant, who is the Scottish Woodlots Association development worker. So we'll be hearing from all of those this evening. If you could stay on mute while people are talking, that would be fantastic. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, and then we will have a bit of a Q&A session later on. So we can pull those questions out that you want to ask while you remember. And we can also do some live questions where you can talk to people directly and have a bit of a conversation about woodlots. You'll notice the meeting is being recorded. You'll have had the warning, so feel free to keep your camera off if you'd rather. And I think without further ado, there's a couple of people still coming in, but that's fine. I will introduce our first speaker, who is Tom Bradley from British Columbia in Canada. Tom and his partner manage a 600-hectare woodlot, which they acquired a license for back in 2000. And as he's going to tell us over the next little while, it's been quite a wild ride, the experience of being a woodlotter in Canada. So I think without any further fuss, I will hand over to Tom. If you'd like to share your screen, we will let you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for having me. And perhaps I successfully shared my screen. Okay. It's a pleasure to be here. I did get a brief tour of the Scottish Woodlot program in infancy several years back, 2017. And I'm happy to come back and talk about the BC Woodlot license program. I'm going to give you kind of a high-level overview of it, the details and exceptions to everything I say, but just want to introduce you to kind of what we have going on over here, and at the end, touch a bit on how I think it can and hopefully will relate to forests in Scotland. So, without further ado, there's a lot of woodlot licenses in British Columbia. They're the red dots on this map, and spread all over the province, concentrated in a few areas, I guess you could say. But there's 850 of them, and they range from 400 to 1,200 hectares in size. It is a pretty big program, and it's very dispersed geographically and socially. It all started back in the 40s when farm woodlots were created to allow ranchers and farmers access to crown timber adjacent to where they lived. Seemed like a good idea at the time, and I think it still is. The current woodlot license system that we know and work within started in 1979 with some significant changes in legislation and regulation. So old and now the current approach. The official program goals of the woodlot program are more small-scale forestry. The second one's problematic, increase the amount of private forest land being managed. It has had some ups and downs. We'll talk about that more later. Increase productivity. I guess you can't increase soil productivity, but I think better management can result in better, larger, more frequent crops of harvestable products. Definitely promote local employment opportunities and promote excellence in forest management. Do a good job. You're directly interested, do good work. That's the official government goals. From 79 to the 2000s, the program grew very rapidly, and the application process was based largely on merit. There was a component of private land contribution wherein you could say, I wish to bring my 4 hectares or 400 hectares of private land into the program as a managed forest. And the more hectares you brought, the more points you got. But it was also heavily weighted to what you wanted to do with your woodlot, how you said you were going to do it. The government hated this process because at the end of the day, they had a selected recipient and usually 2 to 7 really irritated people who didn't get it and felt they should have. So it was high pressure for the government, lots of unhappiness. The great majority of woodlots were issued this way, and me and my partner were one of the fortunate recipients of a woodlot. Now it's a lot simpler. The applicant with the offer of the cash bid and included private land who lives closest to the area in question receives the woodlot. However, there's very few new woodlots being issued or have been issued for the last decade and probably longer. There is no space available on the land base to put new woodlots. We struggled mightily with government 12 years ago or so, or maybe longer. They committed to increasing the program we strongly supported, and it was a damp squib. It never really went much of anywhere. So kind of what there is what we're holding at for the foreseeable future. Woodlots in British Columbia are small forest businesses. We can be for profit in a big way. We can be forest managers who need to be in the black so we don't go bankrupt and lose the ability to do it. Each operator can interpret how they want to approach that on their own. But it's a business. You have to have enough cash coming in to pay the expenses going out, or it does not work. Oops, I put my mouse on a different screen. Personal choice. We must meet the standards set by government, which include many different ecological and forest management factors. We have our own regulation. And I'm sure you've all heard this refrain before, more standards seem to show up every year. So it's a continuous incremental increase in the objectives are required to meet. Of course, the great rule is if it's not explicitly forbidden, it is allowed. And we all try to remember that. We still have a tremendous amount of freedom to manage, make choices as to what to do. We do have to tick all the boxes that we have done everything properly, but we're still the forest managers who make the choices about what to do out on the land, which is a privilege and an honor, frankly. In total, woodlots cover, 500,000 hectares. That's a lot of land. And we have 1.45 million cubic meter annual allowable cut. It's huge, but BC is much huger. We're only 2% of the provincial annual harvest. So there's a lot of woodlots, a lot of people, a lot of activity, and we're still a minnow in the overall sea of BC forestry. But we're very happy to be there, and government assures us that they do not have a plan to get rid of the program, which is great. A woodlot license in British Columbia has a 25-year term, but it's renewed every 10 years. So there's always, at a bare minimum, a 15-year future to your license. It doesn't end click overnight. Woodlots are routinely renewed. There has to be a specific reason for the government to not renew them. They're simply required to renew them unless they have some very specific issues, or they've decided that the woodlot can be used for other and better purposes, at which point we get into the realm of take back and compensation. And none of us want to go there, and it does happen on occasion. Government decides that that area should no longer be a woodlot, it should be something else. It's not common, but it does occur. And there was something else I wish to say about the renewable term, but it slipped my mind, unfortunately. I don't think it was terribly important. So we call it an evergreen license, and there's just no two ways around it. It's a license over Crown land. Many woodlots do include a private land contribution. On this simple graphic, the private land contributions are pinkish purple, and the Crown land tenure is green. There's a whole bunch of woodlots shown there. It's a little concentration area in British Columbia. It's just, how we roll. Each of those woodlots has someone managing it and caring about it. Term Crown land is used a lot. And I know from having been to Scotland multiple times, this is a bit different than your situation. That's a graphic of where I live. The white in the valley bottoms is private owned fee simple private land. Each lot has people who own it, pay taxes on it, it's their property. The green are some provincial parks. The vast area of unshaded land is the Crown land. The provincial government, actually, King Charles owns it, I guess, it's technically, but the provincial government issues various tenures and leases for timber and mining and water and backcountry experiences and all sorts of things on that very substantial blank area on the map. Our woodlots are issued over the Crown land area. Crown land in British Columbia is a contentious issue. This fine gentleman from the West Bank First Nation has a very different view of the Crown land than vacant land managed by the province. From his perspective, that is the traditional territory of his people and his nation, and he wants it back. So we have a fascinating ongoing situation in British Columbia with First Nations land claims, First Nations use and occupancy. It's far from settled. So to summarize that little intro, it's a 10-year over Crown land. We have to meet the provincial government standards. The Crown land is actually unceded First Nations territory. We as a province and a society are attempting reconciliation and settlement of the First Nations land question. It's not going very fast, and there's no end in sight. So, may you live in interesting times. It's just, this is the backdrop for our forestry operations in the province at this time, and will be, I think, for a significant length of time to come. So what do we woodlots think we're doing? Well, I poached this slide from my general manager the other day. In his view and the view of our board, woodlots believe in small scale forestry. We like diversity. And we recognize that it's really a privilege to be a caretaker and a steward of land that we work on. Social license is a term that's used a lot in British Columbia now. It relates to a lot of conflict that's going on in the province about land use and forest use. And it's talking about working in a respectful and inclusive way to get people on side with what you're doing, or at least not adamantly opposed. So, it's something that the forest industry in particular, and many other industries who have a presence outside the settled areas in the backcountry, are doing to, just try to smooth things along and establish that it's not, we don't get to do everything we want, but we don't want to go home and never come back either. Can we work this out? Woodlots believe in excellent forest management, that resilient and healthy ecosystems could be a multi-week study session. It's a fascinating topic, and British Columbia has a huge range of ecosystems because we have the coast and the dry interior, we have valley bottoms, we have mountaintops, immense matrix of ecological complexity, and our management of the ecosystems has been atrociously bad for close to a century. So we are trying to make up for lost time. And woodlots believe in innovation. Um, Our track record is mixed on that, and we'll talk about it a bit more. And, why bother to do this? What gets people involved in this? Because for a lot of work, it's a business. You can make some money doing it, not get rich, but you can pay yourself. Um, why bother? Well, the hook for almost all of us is the desire to demonstrate what we think is right in terms of forests management, ecosystem management. It's the only way we can do this, unless we could afford to buy a large forest estate and manage it. We can't, most of us can't. So this is our ticket to practice forestry at a personal level. This is what we think should happen. It's very, very seductive. And that's what keeps people plugging away in the program with its ups and downs. And it's very, very gratifying. The picture underneath the slide is a friend of mine named Wayne Klein. Wayne's an 80-year-old rancher, um, big game hunter. I'm, from a different social set. We like each other a lot. We never would have met without the woodlots, and I really like what he does with his land. This is a logged area on his woodlot. It's beautiful. So it's kind of speaks to the program's strengths and the connections we build. Segue, the strengths, diversity, the forests and the people. This is a typical Boundary Woodlot Association meeting. There's my friend Wayne peeking out from behind that bush. We've got furry folks, we've got folks in high vis and hard hats, wide selection of people. These are all woodlot holders, forest workers, gathering socially to talk business, learn about Douglas fir bark beetle management approaches, and they all genuinely like each other. This is a fascinating cross-section of society. And the diversity brings different opinions, different viewpoints, different solutions, and is just really invigorating. Innovation and creativity. Our regulation encourages innovation. What's innovation? It's trying to figure out ways to accomplish mutually agreed upon goals that are different, hopefully better, or at least successful, work for you, work for your forest, deliver what's looked for, but not using the everyday standard cookie cutter approach. Get a large machine, clear cut it. Challenge there is the local government staff is often not that enthused about innovation because it means more work for them. If you do the standard cookie cutter approach, everyone knows what it is, how it works, what's supposed to. Innovation leads to uncertainty and a lot of discussion. They don't have time, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. They're overworked, they have too much to do, short-staffed. However, Uh, the program is definitely pushing for greater innovation, greater flexibility. And as the tagline says, frankly, you have to be pretty innovative to stay in this business. You have to think and you have to come up with ways of doing things. It's a strength of our people. And I also mentioned the fact that, the common endeavor ties us together. Our friendships and acquaintanceships from the program cross social lines. The woodlot community is a very viable thing in British Columbia. We enjoy each other's company and we like working together, and we're all kind of happy to be in the program. Never would have met these guys if I hadn't been part of this. Among the program's strengths of the woodlot is that the harvest rate of your patch of land, 400, 600, 800, 1200 hectares, is based to the actual forest growth rates on that land, related to the actual forest growth rates. So you're constrained to harvest in most situations at a relatively even pace. Every 5 years, we have a cut control period. You get to harvest 5 years cut based on your land base in those 5 years, then go to the next 5 years. As a result, the overall impact levels are quite small. We end up in a 5-year period doing, frequently less than one standard size cut block, and the conventional forest industry would put 10 or 12 of those in the area in one pass. So it's a different approach. It can result, and often does, in a forest management regime that meets a lot of other targets than timber, retention of forest cover, water management, visual management, and it can get along fairly well with neighbors living down the hill. Not always, but it's most people agree that they prefer us to 10 large cut blocks, clear cuts showing up in one 4-month period. And the program's also a way to bring small, relatively isolated patches of forest under management. This is my own woodlot. It has an immense canyon on one side, an immense canyon on the other side. White is again all private land. There really isn't much way to get to here except coming up this hillside, and the government decided that it wasn't a logical part of a much larger management unit at the time, so they made it a woodlot. That is, in many areas, how woodlots were selected, and their activity, their function of bringing small areas under forest management is one of the strengths of the program. Many woodlot holders choose to do education and outreach with local schools, with community groups interested in nature. It's not a requirement, but it can be very, very rewarding for both sides, for the holder and for the people that get to come out to a forest management area and learn about the forest and what we are doing. And also to enjoy the many standing trees that are still hanging around because we have a cut rate balanced to the size and productivity of our small tenure. Some where have we gone wrong points. As you can see, not all days go perfectly well in British Columbia. That truck required a machine to get it out of where I had it stuck. This program started many years ago in the 80s, before climate change was really a thing. So we saw the forest as a warehouse for trees that would politely stand on the stump until we got around to harvesting them on a nice orderly schedule. And then the climate changed. We now have wildfire issues. I mean, we currently are doing the worst recorded fire year in British Columbia history in terms of area burned. And we have already gone through the famous mountain pine beetle epidemic, the lower slide of red trees that killed a vast swath of pine forest in central British Columbia that was parked waiting till its time came up to be logged and sent to the sawmill, and the beetle got there first due to a change in climatic conditions. And we had an absolute nightmare on our hands that continues to this day. Beetle is quieted down. It's done all its killing. It's gone to Alberta, actually. But we're still dealing with the impacts of that epidemic and other problem forest insects from the forester's point of view. Douglas fir bark beetle, spruce bark beetle, and some other things are behaving more aggressively than they used to. We profoundly hope that they don't do exactly what's shown in that picture of the red trees, but we're getting worried that hope's not good enough and we are going to suffer through consequences like that in some other places. We didn't have a great succession plan when Woodlot started. We were all young, no one was ever going to die, and when we issued a license that included Crown land tenure and some private land stuck on the side, we created a succession headache that still goes on today. You want to pass the woodlot on to a family member or somebody else, and it's got 100 hectares of private land in it. When you put that private land in, it was worth, $10,000 a hectare or less, maybe 5,000. Prices have skyrocketed, not just due to inflation, land prices. So to buy that land from you so you can retire or replace it with another piece, people are looking at a staggering amount of money to acquire the land or pay for it. It makes passing the woodlot on really, really difficult. Many woodlotters hit this point and we can now take the private land back out. It's something that has been done over and over to enable the woodlot license on the Crown tenure, unencumbered by the private land, to be passed on to somebody else. So that's, we didn't see that one coming thoroughly. Unintended consequences. Woodlot in British Columbia is a saleable business enterprise. It's a small business you can sell to somebody else to transfer it. That's absolutely required for our program. We invest in these places. If you are looking at a significant unamortized road or planning investment, you need to get that money back to make yourself whole. But okay, has to be saleable. But this free market sets the price of woodlots quite high, we have found out. It's not just the timber productivity that's always being bid on. People want to have a woodlot. So the price gets way up there, making it a barrier to entry for many people. We now have woodlot collectors. The law says you can only have 2 woodlots. Doesn't say how many your wife can have. Oh, your wife can have 2. Your son can have 2. Your brother can have 2. Some of the woodlot collectors are the best darn licensees we have. These are incredibly competent people who do a great job, but it wasn't the intention that we would have an individual with de facto control over way more than 2 woodlots. No one has a solution to this. It's a thing that happened. It's just an unintended consequence. And we kind of scratch our head and go, well, don't know what to do about that, if anything. Probably nothing's the best course. So how does this relate to Scotland? Well, I got to meet this gentleman a few years back, thoroughly enjoyed myself and saw many interesting things. And I think there are some linkages, to say the least. The small scale operations concept. Yeah, it became very clear to me very quickly that your small scale operations are even smaller than ours, but it's ideally suited to owner operators, meaning that you don't hold the rights and hire people. You do the work yourself and put the money in your pocket. And many of our licensees approach it that way too. It makes things much more financially viable. It's not a requirement where you don't have the machine or you need expertise. You reach out and bring somebody in, but you look for things you can do to pay yourself the wage. It's vitally important to many small scale rural, we say, countryside, I think you say, businesses. This is not, for most people, something that keeps them alive all year long. It's another economic activity. They choose to live where they live, and everyone who lives in the countryside is familiar with having to put together a wider range of jobs and income sources to stay there. It's not common to simply have a job. So having a small scale forest operation can really help rural people make ends meet over the course of a year. And again, just like in BC, it's a way to bring forest management to smaller or more isolated forests, places that probably aren't a great fit for the standard Till Hill industrial model, but there's ways to work there that benefits the forest, benefits the economy, benefits people, and ends up with everyone generally happy. That I've already talked about it in BC, but people who care about the forest can work actively in managing forests in a woodlot situation. It's almost an intangible benefit. It's hard to describe, but it is really, really important to the people involved in it. It becomes a huge part of our lives, and let's be blunt, for some of us, it is our lives. This is what we do. I don't know, maybe that's a little pitiful, but it's very engaging. And people who like forests generally like being out in them and doing things. So it's a way to combine what you like to do with your work and roll it all into one. And intergenerational links are incredibly important. The Woodlot program is not perfect at this, but in BC, we're seeing many woodlots being passed on to younger related members of the family, sons, daughters, nieces, nephews, who have been involved either peripherally or directly for many years. And it just flows naturally to them, and they're a good fit for carrying forward the work. There's no picture for outreach and education because, frankly, we're it. The people here. So in closing, of course, there's differences between Scotland and BC, very profound ones, but there's a lot of similarities in the potential for the Woodlot program too. I'm sure that there is a place for, small countryside enterprises in Scotland. And, just got to stress again how rewarding it can be for those who are involved and who try to do it. It's a great program. And that's the end of my presentation.
Wow, that was fantastic, Tom. Some really, really inspiring food for thought there. I love the way you included so much about the social side of it, as well as the kind of productive forestry side and all of those different elements. And I'm sure there's going to be, quite a few questions come the end. And yeah, perfect timing there too. Very impressive. Fantastic.
Pure luck. Pure luck.
I don't know. I think you've been rehearsing for weeks now. So we are going to hand over to Andy now, Andy Brown from Clavrock, who you saw featured in Tom's presentation. As a quick intro, Andy is the founder of the Scottish Woodlots Association. So he'll give you a bit of an intro to the association and what we do, because I think I may have failed to mention that altogether at the beginning. So it was founded over 10 years ago, and he is a proud holder of a woodlot license at Clavrock, and he comes from a background in forestry on estates and sawmilling. I think with that, Andy, if you're ready, and Gail, I should say, I will hand over to you.
Hi, thanks, Morag, and thanks, Tom. That was a great presentation. Really enjoyed that. So we were going to talk briefly just about the sort of Scottish experience and what we've done so far, and setting up a Scottish Woodlot Association inspired by the guys in BC. So I'm just gonna see if I can share this.
Might take a minute.
Yeah. Can everybody see that?
Yep, so good, Andy.
Cool. Okay. So, yeah, just a quick introduction to the Scottish Woodlot Association. So we've got some photos here from, all the photos in this presentation are from Scottish Woodlots. So we've got Gary Servant and Ross Gemmell at Corehead Woodlot on the left there. That's up at Moffat. And then we've got some felling and filming that we did here at Carlaverick on the right. And the wee photo is one of our meetings. Now, we used to all get together, but nowadays we can do it on Zoom, so it's a bit handier. So we're a non-profit grassroots cooperative run by volunteers. We started out in 2011 when we first found out about woodlots in BC, and we sort of formally incorporated as a non-profit co-op in 2012. And the founders were foresters in the south of Scotland, southwest Scotland particularly. So over the last 11 years, we've been sort of working pretty hard to help woodlot licenses become a thing in Scotland, and bring that concept from British Columbia over here. So here we've got some of the stuff that inspired us in BC. So we've got a woodlot license holder here, planting and then felling. That isn't the same tree, obviously. And then we've got folks doing a presentation there. And I think it really inspired us. Just it was a smaller scale. We don't have this sort of family forestry in Scotland. So that was really why we wanted to bring the concept over here. It's very hard to own forestry in Scotland. If you know, even if you work in the industry, you tend not to own woodland yourself or have access to woodland yourself. And in some ways, we saw this sort of concentration of land in BC. There's a lot of parallels with Scotland, and the way those guys had come up with this licensing concept really seemed to fit with our situation here in Scotland. So although it's on a different scale, some of the situation was kind of similar, we thought. So it seemed like a good idea to try and port that over here. So we have managed to set woodlot licenses up. There's been 10 set up over the last 10, 12 years. Most of our woodlot licenses are on what you would probably call non-commercial woodland. So they're usually broadleaves, or they're mixed conifers and broadleaves. And it tends to be in small blocks that are out of the way, hard to manage, expensive, that kind of fall out with the standard commercial forestry in Scotland generally, but not entirely, but generally. Woodlots are a great way of getting these unmanaged woods back into management, and our woodlotters have done things like improving access, improving the age diversity, so doing bits of felling and then restocking, and also introducing new species. And at the moment, there's more landowners and foresters working on setting up more across Scotland. So just sort of some photos. So on the left, we've got, this is a volunteer helping out on a woodlot license. So this is over at Sperrich doing some felling of Sitka. And obviously all the felling, the work that we try and do is done by competent people with chainsaw tickets and the right safety equipment, you know, risk assessments, all that kind of stuff.
The standard is really important.
Yeah, standards. Yeah, it's really important to hit those high standards and keep everybody safe. On the right there, we've got, I think this was in the first woodlot, of course wall. So you can see the paint marking on that tree. So what the woodlotter would do is mark out the thinnings before he did any thinning. And the paint would sort of, so that the owner would get a chance to look at the thinnings before we actually went ahead and did it. That was the thinking behind that. So principles overall are the same as in BC. So the woodlot licenses are managed sustainably. So each year the idea is that you don't exceed the allowable annual cut. And this means that the woodlot is always producing. And generally speaking, but not exclusively, the woodlot are managed using small-scale forestry techniques, so chainsaw felling, horse logging, trailers, small wheelbarrows, you name it. But not exclusive. Some of them have been harvester forward or more standard. It's just what fits. This is one up in the Highlands. So this is clearing some spruces in a tractor. So we've done lots of different stuff on our woodlots. So this shows some of the range of different operations. So we've got on the top photo, that's a coarse wall, and that was the woodlotter there was cutting firewood and then selling it to local businesses and farms and things like that. So he was sort of felling it and logging it and making firewood. The bottom left photo, Mark there was doing sawmilling on the woodlot with a mobile sawmill. So he was processing the fir and then selling it.
Who's that again?
Now that is with Doogie Vipon from BBC. So that's Landward. So they did some filming there. So that's a shot of that. And then at Sperrich there, you can see a bit more standard. So that's spruce that's been horse logged out and then sent off to local sawmill on a timber wagon. So you can see we did the full range from firewood trailer right through to full-scale timber wagons. So we were really pleased with the continuing support from BC, and the guys in BC were doing press releases at the same time, to show that we're making progress, and I really appreciated that. They gave us a lot of encouragement and sort of practical support right from the start, and they've kept that going all these years, which we really appreciate, and it's really encouraged us to keep going. So just sort of briefly, just to talk about our woodlot license. So we're really pleased. We've got number 5 in Scotland. So we've had it since early 2015. So we've done lots of forestry on the woodlot license, thinnings, small-scale fellings, respacing, scrub cutting, and then replanting the bits that we've felled. And we've done all that. As you can see, that's me doing it there with a chainsaw. So we've done it with low-impact forestry. And it's been great for our family. So it's been a great educational resource. So our kids have sort of grown up with the woodlot from when they were little. So Iona's a bit bigger. She's quite young there, but she's 14 now. And Duncan and James are 12. It was great during COVID, actually, because it was a good place for us to go with the kids, wasn't it? And yeah. So the woodlot is professionally managed to an agreed woodlot management plan. Total area is 32 hectares. Mainly broadleaves, but it also includes a bit of sick spruce, beech, and there's scattered veteran oaks right through it. It's an ancient oak wood, and it's also an historic deer park where the king and others used to go hunting, and Lord Maxwell behind Calaverick Castle. We've currently got the annual cut 2 cubic metres, although we've had higher rates in the early years. This is kind of and just to show that there is a professional plan behind it all. So this map shows the stages of the thinnings that we're doing, and we're doing coppicing. And this map is what we use with like a good reference, and there's a risk assessment that goes with this for the guys that are working on the woodlot. We just work in pairs. Yeah, that just shows the different age classes and different species mixtures. So there's a suite of maps for the management plan. But all the woodlots have had a management plan usually for either 5 or 10 years drawn up as part of the agreement with the landowner. And there's a formal license agreement in place which covers all the ins and outs of running the woodlot. This is taken earlier on in the summer. Just an example of some of the kit we use. As Tom says, it's a small scale. But this is a great bit of equipment. It's an Ulster mini forwarder, and it's been really good at getting the firewood that we've cut out. This is a small group felling that we've done. There's 2 of them that we did over the summer. We got about 20 tons of timber out of here, and we're going to be restocking this over the winter time. But this is a great kit, and it doesn't do any damage as well. So when it goes in and runs out with the timber, it takes it about 2 or 3 tons at a time. It leaves very little in terms of footprint or any damage on the grounds. You barely know it's been there. So it's a really good for this sensitive site. This is the firewood stacked on the left hand side. So we've been doing that. We've been collecting
Feels
that.
like we've been doing it forever.
Yeah. So we're working our way through it for the next couple of years. It's not just about cutting though. This photograph on the right shows us doing respacing work. So basically there's been Sitka's been felled out, and then oaks have been planted in the woodlot. In the past, the birch has sort of come in and it was shading out the young oaks. So we did quite a program last summer of respacing and cutting down the birch to give more light and space for the oaks. So we've done that over the years at various places. This is a dead cost for us really, but we do it just to give back to the woodlot and to give nice oaks in the future. Another thing we've done, this is my daughter Iona, this is when we improved the access to the woodlot. So we got a local contractor in and some stone, and we re-stoned the entrance so we could get a timber wagon in, and we put a pipe in over this drain. And again, we did that as the woodlotters, just to improve it. I think I'm kind of coming to the end. I hope that's okay time-wise. But just sort of finally, the final picture there shows that's Holly Regen. So that's that we've thinned out. You can see the old stumps, and it's let more light in. It's encouraged the natural regeneration in the woodland and the woodlot. So overall, I think it's been good for us.
Yeah,
as a family.
Absolutely.
We've really enjoyed it. It's been a lot of work setting up the association over the years.
And I think it's meant something different to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
For you and your background, that's been important. But I think for myself and the children, it's, who've maybe not had the same expertise as you, it's been nice to sort of re-engage with the forest and just the aesthetics of being outside in natural light. And maybe in the back end of COVID, that was kind of a survival for us, wasn't it, to have the woodlot during a lot of those metaphorically dark days, where we could escape to the woodlot and have a bit of respite, as it was. And the children, they weren't in school, but we were still able to learn. We were still able to teach them about their environment, and that was really important for us.
Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Gail and Andy. Wonderful to hear about the connections with BC and how the Scottish Woodlot Association came into being. And again, also really good to hear that family side of the benefits of woodlots too. And I'm sure there's going to be some questions for you later on. We are going to move now to our next speakers, who are Anna Austin and Robbie Cowan, Anna Austin is the estate manager at Calaverock, which is the woodlot Andy and Gail have just been talking about. And Robbie Cowan is a third generation estate worker there, he's the conservation manager with a role focusing on biodiversity. And that's planning, implementing, and sort of overseeing it. And Anna says she's a recently new into the world of land use and forestry, but they're both sort of huge enthusiasts and supporters of the Woodlots Association, and it's great to have them here tonight. So I will hand over to you, Anna and Robbie.
Great, thank you very much. Let me just share my screen, and hopefully you can see my presentation. Give me a thumbs up if that's going okay.
Yep, it's all good.
Perfect. Great. Well, listen, thank you very much for inviting Robbie and I along tonight. as Morag said, my name's Anna Austin, I'm the estate manager at Claverock Estate, and yeah, I'm delighted to be able to contribute to this discussion about the benefits of the woodlot licence in Scotland in managing sections of what we think are very special woodland, what we have here at Claverock. So before I really begin, I think I should probably just caveat that I have only been in here in the post at Claverock for about 6 or 7 months. So while I know a lot more about the estate and our woodlot relationship with the Brown family now than I did 6 months ago, I'm still very much learning about it, but Andy is proving to be a very good teacher, so we're really grateful for him for that. So it is really lucky for me to have Robbie join me tonight, because Robbie's the conservation manager here at Claverock, and as Maura kind of alluded to, Robbie's family have been on the estate for many generations, and so I'm very lucky to have the benefit of his and his family's historic knowledge of how the castle wood has been managed for many years. So before Robbie really kind of gives you probably the more interesting half of this presentation, I'll set the scene a little bit in terms of giving you some background to the estate, and really the presentation that I've got to show here is mostly photographs. I just thought it was probably just nice to see some pictures of the estate for context. So yeah, I'll flick through these now. I think there's maybe a little bit of a delay just in terms of the time it takes for the slides to move on, but let me know if you're seeing the next one. There we go. So I guess just for context, Claverock Estate is a coastal estate down here in southwest Scotland. Anyone who is from Dumfries and Galloway, or indeed Scotland, will know that this means we get quite a bit of rain. But it does also mean that we've got lovely green grass and so here at the estate, you can see from the photo on the right hand side that we're bounded by to our west by the River Nith, and we are bounded to the south by the Solway coast, and to the east by a smaller river called the Locher Water, and the town of Dumfries sits to our northwest. So you can see on that map that Claverock Castle is pinpointed, and Castle Wood, which is the woodlot that we're talking about here, sits around the castle in that area. A large part of the estate to the south is what we call merse land. It's covered by water some of the time, but it's suitable for grazing. Robbie will talk a bit more about this, but at Claverock here we're lucky to have a national nature reserve running along the merse, which means that the area is managed and protected by Nature Scot for wildlife habitat. And the next photo, I'll just give you a wee or a kind of idea of what I'm referring to. So in this photo, and can you see it yet? Because I'm conscious there's a bit of a delay. You can see the castle surrounded by the castle wood, and is the merse, and then the seabed. The tide is out in this photo, so you can see quite a lot of the seabed. Hills that you can see in the background are some of England's Cumbrian hills. So that gives you a kind of idea as to where we are. The next photograph here is taken from a slightly different angle, and the castle and the castle wood are shown in the kind of larger of the two orange outline. And I've also circled a small but significant area of woodland that belongs to the estate, which is called the Woodlot, and I think Robbie might say a bit more about that later on too. But it's not covered by wood licence, but it is another area of very special forestry for us. And next photo, slightly different photo from a similar angle. So I mean, hopefully these photos just give you a sense of the makeup of Claverock Estate. We're around about 2,500 to sort of 6,000 areas. So we don't have huge banks of forestry like other kind of upland estates might have. when I asked Rob how much he thought there was, he reckoned about 68 hectares of woodland dotted around. Andy, maybe you know better than that, but that's yeah, it's given me the thumbs up, which is positive. So I mean, it makes our forestry management strategy, I guess, a little bit more than you know, it would be on other estates that have a lot more. But the historical significance of our woodland means that it's very precious to us, and we want to ensure that it's still there, you know, in this form in hundreds of years to come. So in that respect, there is a real sense of responsibility, pressure, make sure that we're doing everything correctly when it comes to the wooded areas, and yeah, and really trying to kind of protect what's there. The current woodlot licenses that we have with the Browns covers the wood extends to, I think, is about 30 hectares. Andy, is that kind of right what I'm saying? Basically, I think I'm right in saying it was one of the first in its kind in this area, and from an estate management perspective, can really be huge benefit of this type of arrangement, because it's an opportunity and a huge relief, quite frankly, for the estate to have someone who is as experienced and qualified as Andy working on an area of woodland that is as significantly kind of historically important for the estate. And I mean, bluntly, again, the having a woodlot license in place removes an element of pressure from the estate of having to actively manage this area of woodland. And it means that I guess I can sleep a bit easier at night knowing that it's in very good hands, and that there's decisions being made for the right reasons, and that we can, you know, we have a very kind of transparent program in place as to the work that's being done. So I mean, from my perspective, I think it's, you know, it's very positive. Most of the woodland, the native woodland, and it includes a scheduled ancient monument area within, and within that there's a guardianship area which is managed by historians. So those additional characteristics really just increase our need to ensure that the wood is being managed who has the specialist expertise to do that, and certainly feel very lucky to have the support of Andy and his family via the woodlot license in all of that. I guess the only other thing to mention is, before I kind of hand over to you, is it's a very warming feeling, I guess, to know that activities involved in managing the woodlot is something that I enjoy together. Finding enjoyment in the outdoors and something that I think will be given greater focus in the future as we learn more about mental health and the benefit of exposing yourself to nature and environment and, you know, all of that. And I think that from estates like Calaverock really have some thinking to do about how they can contribute to in that respect, and the license framework to me like a great way of being able to do that in a small way. So I mean, rather than droning on anymore, I think I'll hand over to Robbie, and he can tell you a bit more about the specifics of the Castlewood, unless I think we're doing questions at the end, aren't we? So I'll just move straight on, Robbie, and I will do your driving.
Thank you very much, Anna.
If you tell me when you want the...
Yeah. Well done. Thank you. Well, hi, everybody. Yeah, thank you very much again for inviting Anna and I to be part of this woodlot presentation. I mentioned at the start of this, I'm Robbie Cowan. I'm the conservation manager on the estate. My role is to increase biodiversity, which includes meadows, creating meadows, very small scale woodlands, and wetland projects, which we're actually working on just now, along with estate tasks. I've worked on Calaverock Estate for 24 years now. I come from a gamekeeping conservation background, and I took on this role from my father and my great-grandfather before him. So my family has worked and lived here for just over 100 years now. which we're very proud of, as you can probably tell. In the next few slides, I'll talk over the history of the Castle Wood and explain about our partner agencies and some of the visitor attractions which all adjoin the wood to help you bring more of an insight to the area and the woodland and touch on some of the benefits to biodiversity that Andy and his team have created. Okay, Anna, next slide. The wood is adjacent, the wood is an ancient semi-natural woodland, which earliest records show maps and some really old military maps dating back to 1750. However, we think that the woodland date will be further than that, with mentions in the Historic Scotland archives of deer parks, which were within the surrounding wood adjacent to the castle. Back in the 50s, that's so evident by some of the old, you can see some of the old forestry works and old oaks in the wood that would suggest it is really, really old. It's a fascinating, beautiful woodland to walk through. In more recent times, there was a small sawmill on the estate, and we believe probably around the 1800s, which would harvest timber from the castle wood. And that would have been used to provide fencing and timber for building houses and barns on the estate. Next slide, Anna. There we go. There was also a highly productive shipbuilding yard in the nearby village of Glencaple. There are some huge spruce trees, which you can just see in that photo there, within the woodland that we were told would have been planted, managed and harvested for ship mast, possibly bowsprit. They're very handy. I still use these today for a navigation aid, because there's many a time, even though I've been here forever, I still managed to get lost in that wood. It's huge. And I personally use them as a navigation aid. So you always look up when you get lost. And if you see those trees, you can work out where you're going. Next slide, please, Anna. Calaverick Castle, which lies to the northeast of the Castle Wood, it dates back to 1270, managed by Historic Environment Scotland, as Anna previously mentioned. So as you can design, due to its triangular shape and its iconic turrets surrounded by a double moat, one of the busiest attractions in the region, which draws around 1,000 visitors every year. The site has a scheduled monument protection status in the area surrounding the castle, which includes a large part of the surrounding woodland. And Andy's briefly touched on that before about all the conditions that apply with all the forestry works in this area due to that protection status. The Calaverick National Nature Reserve is a popular attraction all year round, with interlinking paths to the castle and to the Wellfall Trust. The Castle Wood adjoins the Calaverick National Nature Reserve. This is the UK's largest wetland reserve, which attracts over 40,000. The NNR, the National Nature Reserve, is a unique part of the longest continuous merse in the UK, which runs through it, which has a site of special scientific interest status, the SSSI status. You can see from the photo, it runs adjacent to the boundary of the wood. A recent agreement was made to include part of the woodland within the National Nature Reserve boundaries, which is managed by Nature Scot. This is one of the Nature Reserve's paths running through the Castle Wood, which you can see why it's so popular. It's a lovely walk, actually, summer's day. And this gives access to bird hides, picnic benches, and is designed for disabled access as well. This one here, this is Wardlaw Hill. This one's not in the Woodlot agreement, but it is a little bit of woodland that's very special to us, and it does have a lot of historical value. So yeah, this is Wardlaw Hill. previously mentioned by Anna. It's a small, perfectly round wood with mature beech and Scots pine, and records show it's an Iron Age hill fort. It was a Roman outpost, and it was a lookout and a meeting point for the Maxwell clan. In more recent times, it's been a community gathering point for occasions like the Queen's Jubilee celebrations. There's a footpath from the castle, which offers some of the best panoramic views in the Solway. The last major felling work in the Castle Wood took place in around 2001, I think it was, 2002, thereabouts, Andy. You'll be able to correct me on that. Blocks of spruce and larch had reached maturity and were harvested. And this was a turning point for us in terms of forestry management within the estate. And it helped us in future planning for choosing species to restock with. We quickly realised that having small blocks of commercial forestry was not economically viable on that scale. By the time we had harvested, replanted, and reinstalled the access points, there was very little to no profit. A decision was made at that time that we would restock using native broadleaf hardwoods, which is more in keeping with the surrounding adjacent native woodland. The huge benefits to biodiversity made this an obvious choice. The photo shows a great example of some of the woodland management Andy has carried out. Broom, willow and birch tried to take over, but it's now been brashed and thinned out, which is allowing the air in. We're a fairly small size estate, and we're not in a financial position to have a full-time forestry team managing these sites properly. So we're very, very grateful to the Woodlot Association because such a special wood. This area of recent clearing and coppicing is of particular interest to me. We recently actually had a site visit here with Andy and Anna. Previously, this was open, and with the work that Andy's done and his team have done, it's opened up a small area, and light can now get in, and it's very quickly activated dormant seeds like foxglove, fern, wood sorrel, which in turn has attracted numerous insects and butterflies. Bats, moths, songbirds have very quickly found a sheltered sun trap, with the occasional tawny owl hunting for its prey. I was yesterday actually just to this little opening just to see how it was getting on, and I spotted this cracking roe deer. It's not the best of photos, but you can just see it there in the bottom corner. It's a lovely buck, just enjoying the sun trap. And last year, Andy just briefly touched on this here. Last year, we had an Irish TV film crew that came to visit us and carry out an interview with Andy and his team to explain the benefits of the Woodlot Association and the relationship that has been made between a country estate and passionate foresters. I just say that Andy has definitely got a hidden talent as a TV presenter. You can see how photogenic he is and how comfortable he is in front of a camera. You've definitely got a future in that, Andy. But Calaverick Estate and the Woodlot Association have worked together now for probably the best part of 10 years. And we feel privileged to have a family with such a high of taking guardianship of such a special ancient woodland. Andy and his team are now very much part of the Calaverick team, and he's now became a very good personal friend of mine. So keep up the good work, Andy, and it's been a privilege to meet you through the Woodlot Association. So thank you.
Thank you, Robbie and Anna. That was wonderful. It's just great to hear you talking so warmly of each other, and then also to hear about how beneficial it is for owners and managers to have people, you know, managing their woodlots, their woods for them so well, and for the sense of sort of peace of mind that gives you. And also really fascinating to hear the links between woodlot management and biodiversity, and also how it fits into your, kind of wider partnership working there, because you've got quite a lot of pieces of jigsaw by the sounds of it. Great to hear that all working well and interlinking. So we're going to talk to Gary's going to talk to us now. Gary is a forestry consultant and contractor, and he's also specifically the Scottish Woodlots Association Development Officer. So he is going to talk us through a little bit where the woodlots are at now and what the idea is going forward, and how can we build how can we expand the whole notion of woodlots in Scotland and get more bits of woodland into management.
Hi folks, thanks to everyone for all their presentations so far. It's been really interesting, all the different angles from all over the world. So yeah, I've just got a couple of slides. I don't keep you too long. I'm sure Tom's ready for his lunch over there in BC, and everyone's been listening attentively so far. Sorry also if the broadband's a bit slow up here. It's working not too bad, but those photos are certainly taking a while to come through. So let me just share this screen, if I can work out how to do that. So just a quick update from me really about what's been happening the last wee while. You've heard plenty from Andy there about the last 10 or 11 years. The Scottish Woodlot Association being set up in about 2012, and a huge amount of work done by Andy, Ross, and all the team on a sort of voluntary, not-for-profit organisation for the last 10 years. So I was kind of brought in this time last year, really. Anna Lawrence produced a great report about woodlots, which you can find on the Woodlots website there, woodlots.scot. Have a good read of that, and that kind of inspired Scottish Forestry to provide some funding, basically, to Upland Forestry, to my business, to act as a partner, basically to support the SWA and to help develop the woodlots concept further. We're just talking about 30 days work last year, 20 days this year, 15 next year maybe. So not a huge amount of time, but really valuable to help move things to get along. So really to take some of the strain off the voluntary board of Scottish Woodlot Association, and to sort of identify landowners, woodlotters, work towards bringing them together. So that's kind of what I've been doing for the last 12 months as best I can. So one of the big things was to set up a new website, which is, as you can see, hopefully on the screen there, woodlots.scot. If you've not seen it, check it out. So we're hoping to, use that as a source for information, case studies, and events and activities and training courses and all that kind of thing. So that's kind of up and running, ticking away. And then, been kind of trying to catch up really with the work that Andy and the team have been doing over the years. So visiting a lot of the woodlot sites that are up and running, and Southwest Scotland mainly. And liaising with other landowners and organisations. That's one part of it. Been drafting responses to things like the community strategy, the land reform consultation, the forestry grant scheme reviews, that kind of stuff. Been trying to get on the events and publicity side of things. The CWA conference last year, Galloway Glens had a great event that Morag was heavily involved with last autumn, Forest and Wood Festival. The odd film, TV appearance, as you've heard. Andy was had us starring in a TV show in his woodlot last autumn, and then just really trying to collate examples of the existing woodlot leases and licenses and share those with landowners and managers to try and get more woodlots set up, basically. We've also got an online questionnaire for people to fill in if they're interested in woodlots, to find out more and to sort of register their interest, and for us to find out, what level of skills and qualifications and interest, what people are after, basically, in the way of woodlots, and what areas of woodland might be available from the landowner's perspective. So, that's what we've been doing. For the next wee while, the priority is very much on supporting potential woodlotters and landowners and trying to create new woodlots. That's really how we're, how we can make this thing more viable by having more woodlots out there. Still a very small number. I'll come to that in a minute. Yeah, developing and maintaining partnerships, training and development, keeping on top of the website, and helping to develop all the paperwork side of things, the leases, the licenses, the case studies, management plans, all that stuff. So just as a quick summary of where things are at, Andy's covered a lot of this already, but there's only been 10 or 11 woodlots created. We think 5 of them are still active. Part of my role, I guess, the next wee while is to try and work out where the vacant ones are and what happened to the ones that sort of slipped off the radar. So that's something to follow up. And yep, as Morag said, it's great to hear the positive side of the story from Robbie and Anna there about Calaverock. At the moment, I think there's 5 landowners that have got active woodlots. Almost all of them are private estates, similar to Calaverock. That kind of scale of small private estates seems to work well. Also, one NGO landowner, Wondrous Forest Trust, at the moment, has woodlots at Core Head down near Moffat. Yeah, speaking to all sorts of different landowners though, trying to work hard with the public sector like Forestry and Land Scotland and Nature Scot, as well as NGOs, community woodland groups, private landowners. So trying to really spread out the woodlots so they're not just all in South West Scotland. We're working with various partners, North and West Highlands, Aberdeenshire, and the borders, trying to get things moving. We've got a list of woodlotters who are looking for woodlots, somewhere between 10 and 40, I guess. And we've got around, as far as I understand it, 40 members signed up, members of the Woodlot Association. And yeah, I'm optimistic that we'll be able to create at least a handful of new woodlots in the next few months to the year. Hopefully a lot more than that. It's not necessarily easy, and there's a lot to think about to make it happen. But yeah, I'm here to help and support really. If anyone's got any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch anytime. That's all from me, really. I'll hand back to Morag, and then we can get started the next bit. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you much, Gary. It's a really useful insight, to know what you're doing and where woodlots are looking to go next. And, and it's probably all, really useful to know that there are people looking for woodlots out there. We almost need a kind of matching service that would match up landowners who would like their woodlands to be managed, or areas that have difficult bits that they can't get to, with the people who would like to be doing woodlots. And that obviously includes the state forest as well as private forests. So it would be good to see that getting off the ground in the near future. So yeah, we can go to questions. I see Tom's heroically been answering questions as they came in the chat after he finished his talk. So there's been a bit of discussion going on there. But does anybody from the floor kind of have a question? Feel free to pop your hand up and unmute and ask any of the speakers a question directly. A question about the presentation, or a wider question about woodlots, or suggestions or ideas for how this could be developed in Scotland. So don't hold back. It's all a bit silent at the moment. I wanted to get Brian.
Sure. I think my question's probably for Andy, but maybe somebody else. I actually have sort of a two-part question. One is, I presume that the estate lands are subject to some kind of land tax in Scotland. Is that correct?
Not as such. No, there isn't a.
Okay.
It wasn't in the past. I don't think that there isn't anything like that now. No.
Okay, so in British Columbia, there is an incentive for private forest landowners to manage their forests, and they get a tax break. So that's why I was asking the question if that might have been an opportunity in Scotland. My second part was, does the Scottish government regulate the practice of forestry or resource management on estate lands? Do they have laws and regulations that apply? Or is it up to each landowner and then the woodlot licensee
Yeah,
or woodlot?
yeah. So there's things like felling. Well, used to be called felling licenses. They're called felling permissions now. So you can't fell without applying for a license to do so, and then you have to restock, replant after you've done that. So there's a whole load of conditions and what have you that the government through Scottish Forestry, the sort of board that sort of runs the forestry in Scotland, basically. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sounds very familiar, Andy.
Thanks for the question, Brian. Would anyone else like to ask any questions? Roland, go ahead. Nice to see you.
Hi. A question for the Canadians, I guess. You've got an annual allowable cut, but am I right in thinking you've got a minimum cut that you have to deliver as well? Is there an expectation of a certain level of harvest? Still,
There is, yes, there is, but it is almost universally not enforced on the small tenures.
okay.
Technically speaking, if we do have an AAC set, an agreement that we'll log 1,000 cubic meters a year. If we don't bother, at some point, the provincial government operating through their agency could advertise a timber sale on our woodlot for the foregone volume. Brian's our walking history record. I don't recall it ever happening.
Once or twice, but very rare.
Yeah. So, and we do have woodlots that are undercut. Normally what happens is, quiet discussions along the lines of what are you doing? If you need to pass this on, pass it on, do something. This is untenable, can't go on forever, but that's different than an actual enforcement operation.
We have, it's basically a use it or lose it policy. If you don't harvest it when your 5 years is up, you don't get to carry it forward into the next 5 years. It's gone. You still have the same level of cut going forward. I mean, at some point you could probably ask for a new annual cut. It might be a little higher because of what you didn't harvest, but that rarely happens. It's a lot of work and very costly to do that.
And you would not be looked upon fondly as you had demonstrated that you weren't really following your previous commitments and agreements.
Yeah, because I mean, in Canada, producing an annual cut is considered a public good because you're maintaining the forest industry, you're maintaining your community industry. And I think in Scotland I can see there. I mean, we've broadened out what we see as public goods to just about everything. To the extent that almost timber is no longer seen as a public good, but all the biodiversity and the access and the conservation management is definitely seen as a public good. And I'm assuming that the Woodlot Association sort of agreements are delivering something both for the public good and for their landowner. Would that be right?
Yep. For the public good, for the province as a whole, and for the holder of the tenure. But that is a rabbit hole I neatly stepped around, because the concept of is forest management good or evil definitely is a topic of public debate here. And most of us in the program strongly believe it's a good. And especially in the drier site forests in British Columbia, where no disturbance is really a death sentence for the old trees that are so valuable there. We have to have disturbance to manage fuel loads and maintain ecological conditions that are favorable for the old trees in the forest to live. We've had a 50-year experiment of no disturbance for a bunch of different reasons, not because it was banned, because it was just impossible to do under the regulatory regime.
Yeah.
And the result has been a debacle. We are the old trees that are so beautiful and so valuable in the dry site old forest, not the rainforest, the dry sites are dying.
Yeah.
And they ain't coming back for 400 years. It's an easy thing to get me started on because we have very strong points of view that really circle around to forests in many locations have a relationship to natural disturbance, and certainly in BC, we're not comfortable with natural disturbance because it means wildfires. So if we're not going to have natural disturbance, what sort of disturbance are we going to have? What's our desired future condition for that forest? How are we going to get there? Great, complicated questions, but we have in the past had make it a park, do nothing, industrial forestry is our two options. And many people, myself included, have been talking about how we need other tools in the box to manage the ecosystem well and properly. So that's blah, 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 blah. Hopefully I covered off the points.
I'd just like to add a couple of things to what Tom just said. To the benefit of licensees, case in point, wildfires, bugs have hit quite a few woodlots in the province. We see very few woodlots being surrendered and turned back to the province or the Crown. The licensees still hold on to them, they work on them, they try and big them back. The other one is about the society or provincial benefits. A few years ago, it's called the Union of BC Municipalities. It's the organization of all the municipalities in BC, did a forestry survey of their communities. And some of the comments came back like, well, we want more of those woodlot things around our community because we like those people. They come and talk to us, and they do things at a reasonable scale. So we, of course, we tried to capitalize that. And so when you have that kind of some support, especially from rural communities, our politicians tend to listen, and they know it's a good thing. And Tom said earlier in his presentation, apart from an angry bureaucrat that doesn't like the program, you don't hear politicians wanting to get rid of woodlots. In fact, we're on a wave of probably more community forests, and woodlots are just not as popular because communities can hold these forests now.
Yeah. Okay, good.
That's great food for thought. Good question, Roland, and thanks Tom and Brian for the answers. Miles, would you like to ask your question?
Thanks. It's a question on a similar theme for you guys in Canada, please. Yeah, we're faced with again similar topics that sort of lack of management isn't really a viable option when we're considering things like pest control, and we're considering pests as sort of grey squirrel, or what you call the eastern grey squirrel, and various deer species. Have you guys, as Canadian woodlotters, got any form of obligation to control what your government would see as pests, and your neighbours would your neighbours object if you didn't, and what ramifications are there if you don't do that? Thank you.
Oh, we don't have. Oh boy, that question just sprouts legs in all directions. We have a legal requirement to endeavor to ensure that our management activities do not foster the increase or spread of invasive plants. That's not squirrels and deer, but it's a very significant issue in our part of, and in yours, think rhododendron. So that's a legal requirement. It's the enforcement and inspection, not so much, but we are required to do that. In terms of animal pests, mammal pests, we don't have a lot yet. We have definite high likelihood of getting there in the south part of the province because we have feral pigs, the European wild boar, surround us and are sending in scouts to take over. So we will be seeing more of them. They aren't here yet. In terms of the pests that we think about the most, they're all insects. And they definitely impact our timber values catastrophically in some cases. We do not have any legal obligations to manage those, and in some situations they're just simply unmanageable. We do cleanup. That's salvage, we call it. That's it. So plants obligated to, mammals don't have many. They're on the radar. Insects, no obligations, but many licensees do whatever we can to try to control insect populations. But as you probably know, Miles, that's a losing game. If you have food for the insects, you cannot kill all the insects. They're bugs. They breed like you wouldn't believe, and they'll be back. So it's been a huge challenge for our program, actually at a existential level, because we had no plans when people took on a 600-hectare patch of forest that was basically pine. They did not envision it dying in 2 years, and then it did. And that wasn't what anyone signed up for. And now it's going on more slowly, but with the same outcome over 25 years in the Douglas fir forests where I live. So it's a problem for us in a huge way.
Thanks. And can I ask Tom, when that did happen, when you sort of lost a lot of that timber revenue and long-term stability in revenue, what happened? You're managing a business. What happened?
Several different things. Some woodlotters said, we give up. It isn't anything that we signed on for, and they wanted to give their woodlot tenure back to the province so the province could find it a new owner. It doesn't work that way. They didn't understand. That was the same as it vanishing. It went away, never coming back as a woodlot. Other woodlotters, as Brian said, just said, okay, we'll harvest everything we can in this brief period. We'll replant, and then we'll hang on to the tenure, the woodlot, because there aren't more being made at this time. You can't replace it. So keep it in the family. In 40 years, there will be economic activity there, or maybe even less in some situations. My president, the Federation, Mark Clark, is on here, and he's working with people in Prince George about pre-commercial thinning and how can we see economic activity from those areas as quickly as possible. I don't know what the split is. Most of the woodlots are still around, even after the incredible impact of losing between half and all the mature and close to mature timber in a very brief period. So that was the wild ride. No one expected that. We didn't sign up for it. Mark, do you have anything to add? That's Mr. Prez, sir?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. One comment I would make is that the cost of carrying a 600-hectare crown land woodlot in BC is minimal. So you don't pay land taxes on it. We have some licensing fees and things like that, but really to just keep the license is the cost is pretty minimal. So that's a big factor. People where I live in Prince George, which is basically right in the center of BC, and on my woodlot we have 600 hectares of crown land, and over the course of 10 years we logged 300 hectares of it. You know, I might add, a very crappy log market, and made very little money, but you know, that's, the trees are all dead, so what are you going to do? So anyway,
cool. Thanks for the answers. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good discussion, and cautionary tale for Scotland as well. Keep an eye on the insects. Gary, go ahead.
Hi, folks. I just wanted to add a quick question for Canadian friends here. Are woodlots unique to BC in Canada, or are they a thing in other provinces and other parts of Canada, other parts of the world? Maybe you could speak about.
I think ours are quite unique, but I'm going to kick that one over to Brian, who's better qualified to answer it than I am.
The woodlot license in British Columbia is unique in that it combines, it is crown land, public land, and can combine with private land. The term woodlot is used across the rest of Canada, and it relates to privately owned parcels of forest land. So, you know, if you hear woodlot versus woodlot license, that extra word license is a very important distinction in Canada. And then in some provinces, like particularly back east, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, there are actually federal government funds that are available through various certification programs to help with reforestation and other things like that. In British Columbia, that's not the case. If you log, you're financially and legally responsible for reestablishing a crop and so on and so forth. There are some programs that, you know, in the aftermath of beetles, if it took out an immature stand that wasn't merchantable, you can apply to different programs to get some funds to help with the clearing, reforestation, put it back into production. But if you log it for a commercial purpose, it's your baby to reestablish. But yeah, woodlot licenses are very unique. So it's a very interesting model.
That's a good clarification. Thanks. Because I think Ontario woodlots interact a little bit on the internet with us, and I hadn't appreciated there was a difference because it's woodlots, not woodlot licenses. Yeah, got it. Okay. Good to know.
I'm going to venture something here. One of the questions was about the view of people have of biodiversity versus forest management. Then we lurched into pests and beetles and how dramatic that impact can be. There's a linkage between those two for us in the program, and that's we have learned by being beat over the head with it that uniform age, uniform species forests, whether natural or planted, are incredibly vulnerable, and that a diversity of age classes and a diversity of species, frequently in a managed forest situation, has resiliency to a point. And what we see is everything under the sun being thrown at our forests by climate change. And, you know, the beetle was this incredible illustration of one species and pretty much on the mature side of things, followed by tremendous areas of tree mortality. So it was a cautionary tale of don't do this. Manage your forests in such a way that you have diversity and resiliency.
Very good shout, Tom. Thank you. Anybody else? Does anybody have anything else they'd like to ask or bring up or are curious about before we close? Or are you all ready to go off into the evening or the day if you're a Canadian and get back to your woods? Oh, Jamie, go for it.
Yeah, finish things with a bang, Morag. I just think we probably need to mention the elephant in the room here, which is, I personally believe one of the factors behind the huge success in BC is the fact that it's Crown land, effectively public land. And I think one of the struggles we've had in Scotland with both woodlots and woodland crofts that I'm involved in, which are similar but different for those that know a bit about them, is that we don't have public land backing our models. And it seems to me that if we want that kind of democratic small-scale forestry model, the public sector is going to have to release some of its land to individuals for woodlots and woodland crofts. And the time is really right now. I think land reform is right up the agenda. We have a Scottish government cabinet secretary in Marie Goujon, who has on the record said that government needs to consider doing exactly that in the context of woodland crofts. And I see no difference in principle between doing it for woodland crofts and doing it for woodlots. So I kind of think if there's any message for our public officials on this webinar tonight, and I know there's at least a couple, that's one for them to take away and think about and talk to their colleagues about, because as I say, we've got a message from the cabinet secretary at the very top. Let's make it happen. Rant over.
It's a great shout, Jamie, and I've been wanting to ask you about woodland crofts, but didn't want to put you on the spot because I realized we hadn't checked in beforehand. So I'm glad you brought it up. And presumably there's room for an overlap as well between crofts and woodlot licenses as well, I'd imagine, somewhere along the line.
Absolutely. A bit of personal background. I first got involved with the Woodlot Association on the back of our experiences with woodland crofts, which at that time had, despite what I've just said, it did certainly have backing from government in terms of support for the model, if not actual provision of land. And I felt that, you know, some of what we've been through might be useful and relevant to Andy and his team. And that was 10 years ago or so now. And at that time, you know, we felt, you know, they were very different things, and that really, you know, woodland crofts was something you'd have in the Highlands and Islands in the crofting areas, and woodlots were for people effectively who couldn't have woodland crofts on account of geography. I think nowadays we feel much more that both models could and should apply in both areas. Obviously, legal at the moment, you can't have crofts in the south of Scotland, but there's no reason why that couldn't change. And equally, as Gary has alluded to, there are opportunities for woodlot licenses in Highlands and Islands, even though you can have a woodland croft as well. And that's because although they are similar, they are different as well. And the different models will appeal not just to different potential tenants, but to different potential landowners. So I would see them definitely coexisting right across the country in an ideal world.
Yeah, good shout. There's huge potential, both woodland crofts and woodlot licenses, to build into community wealth building, I would say, in forestry, which is also something that's being looked at. You know, and I think it's important that we start measuring values in more than financial terms. You know, we've heard a lot from everybody on the call tonight about the kind of social value and benefits of forestry. So maybe one day we'll be able to get that as a line on the spreadsheet, as well as the pounds and pence. Great. Would anybody else like to ask anything or comment on anything that's been said already?
I just want to add to your point, Jamie, about what you're talking. And, you know, the merits of small scale forestry apply equally onto public land and private land. They have similar benefits, whether you're the landowner. We look at our public land in BC and we say every citizen in BC is the landowner. So, you know, in effect, we still take that same attitude. And I think if you hit on it, Morag, if you hit on the benefits, like scenic areas, wildlife habitat, water quality, soil conservation, not to mention the economic side of it, then it's a very strong argument. And we saw, you know, the examples from Anna and Robbie and Andy's work. I mean, that's what we've got, in my opinion, to sell the politicians. That's what we got to keep prompting around here. Just the, you know, the ability to survive wildfires and bugs is a lot dependent on how well managed those forests are. And, you know, we're learning slowly. Unfortunately, you keep having to get hit with a catastrophic season of wildfires to remind us there's a long way to go. But the benefits of small scale forestry, particularly in and around residential areas, community critical areas, viewscapes, et cetera, like that, you can't leave it unmanaged these days. It's just not going to work. Mother Nature will get it one way or another, sooner than later. But anyway, thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to close with a comment that I've listened to politicians talk about rural economic development all my life, because it's obviously a thing. Rural areas frequently are not the wealthiest places, and how do we level up? How do we increase opportunities? And I work am totally involved with the program, the Woodlot program, that offers an incredible tool to accomplish that. And politicians seem unable to grasp the simple fact that if you link rural people to land resources and the productivity from that land, you have accomplished rural economic development. You have not provided them with an income for the entire year, but you have helped immeasurably to keep the community alive, the kids in the schools, and keep the place running. And it's not fancy, but it works. And maybe the not fancy is the critical issue. How do you know, what banner do you produce out of this, or what TV ad? It just works really well. And so, Jamie, yeah, keep at it.
That's a fantastic way to, you know, wrap this up. And, you know, and Scotland's got such a lot of opportunity in front of it right now, with several kind of turning points in policy where this could really be well addressed. So thank you for the wise words. So if nobody else has any burning questions, I think we can wrap up by, oh, Jonathan, go for it.
Yeah, it's not actually a question. It's just maybe a way of wrapping up. Because I'd quite like to give a round of applause. So if we can maybe all put our microphones on and do a round of applause for our speakers would seem appropriate. So microphones on, everyone. Thank you very much.
Well done, guys.
Thanks, Jonathan. My dog got quite excited about all of that. Yeah, no, a huge thank you to everyone who has given up their time tonight to speak. And I know it takes a long time to make a presentation. It's not just turning up here for an hour and a half on the night. So we're hugely grateful to everyone who's contributed. And thank you very much, all of you, for coming along and listening and being interested. We'd love it if you stayed in touch. We'll send an email out with a recording once we figure out where we'll host this video. And we'd be really grateful, you know, if you share it and spread it amongst your networks, and just really talk to people about woodlots and the benefits. You know, it's been wonderful to have woodlotters and the land managers in the room at the same time. So we really hear about how it's mutually beneficial. Yeah, so thank you very much, and we'll drop you an email once we've got that edited, and let us know, you know, if you'd like us to put you on our mailing list so we can keep you up to date with what's happening too. Thank you very much, everybody.
From Canada, thank you all for coming, and Morag, thank you for hosting. You did a fabulous job. Hang out your shingle as a Zoom moderator. Great work.
No, thank you very much. Okay, take care, everybody. Hopefully see you all again.
See you again, Brian.
Yeah, well done, guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you.